When most of us hear Parkinson's disease, the first thing that comes to mind is tremors, right? A shaky hand. But what if I told you that's not the beginning? Not even close. The real story, it starts years, even decades earlier, deep inside the brain with clues you would never, ever connect to this disease. So today, we're going to take that journey, from the very first whisper to the full picture. Let's get into it.
Really think about that for a second. What if a disease could truly start 20 years before you ever notice that first shake? It's kind of mind-blowing, right? A person could be living with the very first signs of Parkinson's and have absolutely no idea. See, the beginning of this story isn't some loud, obvious event. It's a whisper. And honestly, understanding that, it changes everything about how we look at this disease. So where does this journey begin? Well, it starts in a phase that doctors call the prodromal phase. And really, that's the perfect name for it, because this is the invisible beginning. We're talking about a period that can last, get this, up to 20 years before those classic motor symptoms, the ones we all recognize, even show up.
So what are these whispers? Well, take a look at some of these early warning signs. A loss of smell, chronic constipation, and this one's really interesting, acting out your dreams. Like physically moving and shouting in your sleep. It's a real condition called REM sleep behavior disorder. Now, if you think about it, any one of these things on its own, you'd probably just brush it off, right? But when they start to appear together, they can be the very earliest clues of Parkinson's. And here's the kicker. They often start in places you'd least expect, like your gut or your nose.
And this right here is the whole ball game. It's absolutely crucial to understand. By the time someone's tremor is finally noticeable enough for them to go, okay, I should see a doctor, the disease has had a massive, massive head start. We're talking more than 50% of the brain's critical dopamine-producing neurons are just gone. It's this silent, relentless march forward that makes catching it early so incredibly difficult.
Okay, so that's the invisible beginning. Now let's fast forward to the part of the journey where the disease finally steps out of the shadows. This is the stage where it becomes visible. We're talking about the classic motor symptoms, the body's first really loud clues that something is wrong. And this is typically what sends someone to the neurologist's office.
So to make sense of these symptoms, doctors have a handy little acronym, TRAP. It's a great way to remember the four big ones. The T stands for tremor, but it's a specific kind, a tremor at rest. You might have heard it called a pill-rolling tremor in the hand, and it usually starts just on one side of the body. Next up is R for rigidity. This is just a deep stiffness in the limbs or your trunk that makes moving feel like you're wading through mud. The A stands for akinesia or bradykinesia. It's a fancy way of saying slowness of movement. And honestly, for many people, this is the most disabling part. Simple things just take forever. And finally, P is for postural instability. This shows up later in the disease and causes major problems with balance.
And those core TRAP symptoms? They cause a whole bunch of other telltale signs. For instance, that rigidity and slowness can make facial expressions really muted, almost like a mask. Handwriting can shrink and get all cramped up. That's called micrographia. You might notice one arm doesn't swing when someone walks, or they start to take these small shuffling steps that almost seem to speed up on their own, which is known as festination. It's all connected.
All right, so we've covered the outward signs, what you can see. But the big question is, why? What's actually happening on the inside to cause all this? To get that answer, we have to zoom way in and look at the chemistry of the brain.
Okay, welcome to ground zero. This little area deep in your midbrain is called the substantia nigra. It might be tiny, but its job is enormous. It's basically the brain's dopamine factory. And dopamine is the neurotransmitter, the chemical messenger that lets you make smooth, controlled movements. So, in Parkinson's, this is the place that gets hit. The specific neurons in this factory start to die off.
So why are these cells dying? Well, the main suspect is this protein called alpha-synuclein. Now, normally it's just doing its thing, but in Parkinson's, something goes wrong. It starts to misfold, like a piece of origami gone bad, and then it gets sticky. It clumps together with other misfolded proteins, forming these toxic little balls inside the neurons called Lewy bodies. And these Lewy bodies are the calling card of the disease. They're what's poisoning the cells from the inside out.
So what's the end result of all this? Think of it like a communication network. In a healthy brain, on the left, you've got this beautiful, steady stream of dopamine messengers running from the substantia nigra, delivering clear instructions for movement. Everything is smooth. But in the Parkinson's brain, on the right, well, the factory's shutting down. The messenger supply just plummets. The signals get weak, they get scrambled, and that's when you see the tremors, the stiffness, and the slowness. The communication breakdown is complete.
Okay, so with all these different clues, the invisible ones, the visible ones, the stuff happening in the brain, how does a doctor actually make a diagnosis? Well, it's not as simple as you might think. It's not straightforward at all. It's much more like being a detective and solving a complex clinical puzzle.
And here's something that surprises a lot of people. There is no single test for Parkinson's. There's no blood test, no simple brain scan that can give you a definite yes or no. It all comes down to the expertise of the doctor, who has to piece together all the evidence from their clinical evaluation.
So how do they solve this puzzle? It's a multi-step process. First, they do a super detailed neurological exam and take a deep dive into your medical history. They're looking for that classic combination, the slowness of movement plus either a tremor or rigidity. A huge part of the job is also ruling out other things that can look like Parkinson's. But here's a really big clue. They might do what's called a levodopa trial. If they give you this medication and your symptoms get dramatically better, that is a very strong sign pointing to Parkinson's. Sometimes they might also use a special scan called a DAT scan, which can actually show the reduced dopamine activity in the brain.
All right, so once the diagnosis is confirmed, the journey shifts. The focus becomes all about management. And this is so important to hear. While we don't have a cure just yet, we do have an amazing toolkit of treatments. The goal is to manage the symptoms and, most importantly, maintain a really high quality of life.
So when it comes to meds, it's pretty much all about dopamine. The main goal is to either replace it or make the brain think it has more. The gold standard is levodopa. Your brain takes this stuff and converts it directly into dopamine. It's like refilling a gas tank. Then you have dopamine agonists. These guys are clever. They don't actually make dopamine, they just mimic it. They trick the brain's receptors into thinking the real stuff is there. And then there are others, like MAOB inhibitors, which act like bodyguards for the dopamine you already have, preventing it from breaking down so it can work longer.
Now, for some people, as the disease progresses, medications might not work as well as they used to. When that happens, there's an amazing surgical option called deep brain stimulation, or DBS. The best way to think about it is like a pacemaker for the brain. A tiny device is implanted that sends electrical pulses to very specific parts of the brain, helping to override those faulty circuits and bring the motor symptoms back under control.
But you know, it's not just about pills and surgery. Not at all. Managing Parkinson's effectively is a total team sport. You have the neurologist, of course, but you also need physical therapists to work on gait and balance, occupational therapists to help with daily tasks, speech therapists for voice and swallowing issues, even dietitians and mental health professionals. It really does take a whole coordinated team to address every aspect of the person's well-being.
So let's bring it all together and look at the road ahead. Parkinson's is, without a doubt, a lifelong journey. There are ups and downs, but it is absolutely a journey that can be navigated. With the right support, the right team, and the right strategies, the focus is always, always on maintaining a high quality of life.
And why does all this matter so much right now? Because incredibly, Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disorder in the world. It's not a small problem, it's a huge one. And with more and more people being diagnosed, the push for better research and truly comprehensive care has become a global emergency. And really, this quote from StatPearls just nails it. It brings us right back to that idea of coordinated teamwork. It's not one thing, it's not one doctor or one pill. It's that whole team working together that makes the biggest difference in tackling this disease's complexity and really, truly improving someone's life. So we'll end on this final thought. Now that we understand the full journey of Parkinson's, from that first invisible whisper all the way through to its complex progression, the real question becomes, what's next? As the world's fastest growing neurological disorder, how do we, all of us, build a future with the research, the care, and the support that's needed for every single person on this journey?